It's great to see everyone. My name is Michael Williams, and today you and I are going to take a look at 8 reasons why some How to Stop Stuttering programs just don't work. And this is not just limited to How to Stop Stuttering programs. This may be limited, or this may also expand into or cover certain speech therapies or treatment programs. So we're going to look at 8 reasons why some How to Stop Stuttering programs, therapies, or treatments may not work for you. Let's just jump right into this. The first reason, or the first 4 reasons, have more to do with the person going through the program than the program itself. And when I say program, I'm going to be using that interchangeably with treatment, okay, or therapies, but I'm just going to use the word programs, okay? So the first 4 reasons will have to do with the person going through the program or treatment. And the second 4 reasons will have to do with the program or treatment or therapy itself, okay? So let's look at the first 4 reasons. The first one is that the person may set up or establish unrealistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations. Okay? So when we say unrealistic expectations, what exactly are we talking about? We're saying that if a person wants to stop stuttering, they want to overcome stuttering, or they want to speak smoother, they may have set up these expectations that the program or the therapy or the treatment is going to completely cure them. So one unrealistic expectation may have the focus of curing, right? They're looking to cure it. Another one is that they want to completely, 100% stop stuttering. And we're going to talk about this idea of stopping stuttering, but they want it to be completely cured and gone. They want to completely stop it. They want to completely overcome it. And another unrealistic expectation or aspect of these unrealistic expectations is that they want it to happen as quickly as possible. Now, is this really unrealistic? Well, no, we all want stuff to happen as quickly as possible. But here's why, if you set an unrealistic expectation in terms of how quickly you want it to happen, here's why and how this can hurt you. So if you've been struggling with your speech in one way or another for decades, for years and years, almost a decade, 2 decades, whatever it is, and then you expect to go through a program and in 3 days or in 12 days or even in 3 months, you expect it to be completely wiped away and gone, then that's pretty unrealistic, okay? Because you've had decades of your speaking this way and thinking this way and having experiences that has molded and shaped your personality and your identity and just physically wiring, that is, you have a neuronal network now that represents the way you think and speak, that's wired in, and you're thinking, or the person is thinking, that they can undo this or somehow overwrite this in a few days or a few weeks. That's unrealistic, okay? Now, I know you're probably saying, well, don't you promise that in your program that you say in 90 days or 3 days you can stop stuttering? And we will get to that. We absolutely will get to that. But here's what I want you to notice. If the person sets up unrealistic expectations, and we all do this when we go through programs, right? We often will set up some unrealistic expectations, either consciously or subconsciously. I've done it myself too, right? So I'm guilty. When we set up unrealistic expectations, what tends to happen is we're looking for something, we're expecting something to happen that doesn't, right? We're expecting something to happen that doesn't. So we're expecting that, oh wait, I thought I wasn't supposed to stutter anymore after doing this program, or after these 3 days, or after this week, or after these 3 weeks, or a couple of months. I thought I was supposed to be cured, 100% gone. I thought my speech was supposed to be absolutely flawless. But that doesn't happen, does it? So people become disappointed. And when they become disappointed and discouraged, then what happens? Well, then they say, well, see, I've tried everything out there. I've tried your program. I've tried this program. And they just don't work. You guys are out there taking people's money, and the programs just don't work. So, unrealistic expectations. If you are hoping and wanting and expecting something to cure, to eliminate completely, 100%, all disfluencies, right, to completely stop it, then you're going to be very, very disappointed and discouraged no matter what program you go through. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, then what's the use in doing any program? What's the use in even doing Pro 90D? If we can't cure it, we can't stop it, we can't eliminate it. We are going to get to that. So I want you to just hang in there with me, because we're going to get to what you can expect in just a little bit. This is probably one of the biggest ones, right? Is setting up expectations in terms of time, how long this is supposed to take. I want to get it as quickly as possible. We all do, but give it to me in 3 days. It's supposed to happen in a few weeks. It's supposed to happen in a couple of months. It's supposed to be 100%. So we're talking about time, and then we're also talking about just in terms of what it is that you're expecting to happen. So it's supposed to happen quickly, and it's supposed to be complete, 100% completely gone, right? Both very unrealistic expectations. Now, let's talk about the second one. The second one is where some people are unwilling to do the work. Unwilling to do the work. Now listen, I'm not trying to get down on anyone, because I'm just as guilty of this myself when it comes to certain things. I've taken many programs, I've listened to audios, I've spent lots of money on certain things, and all of these can apply to those things, to other programs as well. And one of my very, very, very good friends, and he's also my coach, he's gone through programs, and he's gone through these as well, other programs, other than speech programs. So we've all done some of these things, okay? So don't worry about it. But this is true. If they're not all true, some of them will be true for you and true for me, okay? But there's something that we can do about it, but first we need to be aware, and we need to understand that if you're looking at, or you're currently in or going through a program, you want to be aware of this so that you can counter it, right? You can counter it. So the second one is just unwilling to do the work required. When you are trying to transform your speech, change your speech, improve your speech, speak smoother and clearer, literally what you're doing is you are overriding, you are creating new patterns of thinking, new patterns of speaking, right? And it doesn't matter if it's hereditary, it doesn't matter if the signals are not being sent as quickly, or signals are being sent in the wrong side of the brain. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you can speak smoother, right? But you have to be willing to do the work. And when you're willing to do the work, what that means is that you have to be willing to practice, right? You have to be willing to repeat certain things, a new pattern of thinking and a new pattern of speaking, over and over until it becomes your more dominant pattern, your more dominant habit. So in other words, your willingness to do the work means that you're willing to be consistent, right? You're willing to be consistent, and you're willing to also be persistent. Okay? So some people, they want to get it quickly, and they want to get it as easily as possible. In fact, most people want to get it as quickly as possible and as easily as possible. But with this and many other things, it's not going to happen as quickly as you would like in most cases, and it's not going to happen as easily as you would like. So that means you have to be willing to put in the time. You have to be willing to be consistent. You have to be willing to repeat the same behaviors, the same actions in your practice and in your everyday speech. You have to be willing to repeat those things over and over and over until they become your more dominant way of speaking and thinking. So currently, what's dominant for you is your what? Is your current way of speaking, whatever that is, just your current way of thinking. And when I say thinking, what am I talking about? I'm talking about when you anticipate that you're going to get stuck, when you just know you're going to get stuck, you know you're going to stutter. When you anticipate certain situations and you say, well, I know if I have to introduce myself or say my name, or if I have to ask for this kind of coffee or this kind of chicken, I know I'm going to get stuck. So that's a mindset, that's a pattern of thinking. And what we have to do is we have to overwrite, but that's your current most dominant way of thinking. And when you're speaking, if there are certain letters or words or certain situations where you tend to get stuck, that's your tendency, it's your dominant way of speaking. Does that make sense? So what we have to do is we have to create a new dominant way of thinking and speaking. And guess what? That just takes time. It takes repetition. It takes time. And that time where you're repeating, that you're consistently repeating a new way of thinking and a new way of thinking, a new way of thinking and a new way of speaking in those exact situations or similar ones, what that's doing is it's building new neuronal pathways, new neuronal connections, right? And then the more you do it, the stronger those connections become. And the more you do it, the more insulated those connections become, right? Which then means that you're doing it naturally. So the more you use these new pathways, and the less you're using the older ones, the weaker the older ones become, and the stronger and more dominant the newer ones become. So that means that you naturally begin to think differently, you naturally begin to speak differently. Doesn't mean the old ones are gone. The old structures are probably still there, right? But they're weaker now. They're no longer dominant. So that's why it's very important that you have to be willing to do the work and put in the time. So what's the time? Well, the time can range. And if you're talking about a person who's struggled with their speech for years, you're talking several months, right? Now, it doesn't mean you're going to wait for several months to see results. We've seen people, in fact, most of our clients, when they do the work, they see results well inside of 90 days. Dramatic results, things they literally couldn't do before, they're able to do it within 8 to 12 weeks, right? They're speaking smoothly, they're having conversations, they're ordering food, they're doing presentations, they're doing things they weren't able to do before, well within 90 days. But that doesn't mean it's all automatic, right? It becomes automatic the more they do it over time, and the time we're talking about can be several months, okay? Because we're talking about kind of undoing and creating new pathways. We're undoing something that's taken decades to build, all right? So this is a big one. You have to be willing to do the work. And this is an expectation too, right? You got to know and understand this is going to be challenging. I've got to be consistent. I've got to do the work. So what's the third one? A third one is the person is unwilling to feel awkward. They're unwilling to feel awkward. Again, this is another big one, right? They're all big ones, actually. But if the person is not willing to feel some sense of awkwardness, uncomfortability, of just feeling uncomfortable, then they're never going to be able to learn a new skill, right? Or to change their behavior, to change their patterns of thinking or patterns of speaking. You must be willing to feel awkward and uncomfortable sometimes. Here's some perfect examples. When you're, if you want to change the way that you speak, all right, if you want to stop stuttering, you want to overcome stuttering or blocking or speaking too fast or whatever it might be, then you're going to need to do something different than the way you have been doing it, right? You're going to need to be able to do something or be willing to do something different, because if you try to do it the same way and just tweak it a little bit, it's probably not going to work. You're going to have to do something completely different. So that means changing the way that you speak. Often for many people it means learning to relax and slow their speech down, learning to speak with a different kind of rhythm, a different style. But some people are not willing to do that. You want to know why? Because it feels awkward. It feels different. It feels strange to them, right? It feels foreign, like a foreign language. And so they're unwilling to do that. So I like the way that I speak when I'm not stuttering or stammering or whatever it is. So why can't I just fix it? Well, just because you can't, right? Sure, you probably can, but it doesn't often work, and it's much harder. What we need to do is create a new style, a new way of speaking, which feels, it may feel strange, it'll feel awkward for a while. Why? Because it's different, right? So it's taking you out of your comfort zone, what we call homeostasis, where you are balanced, where you feel comfortable. So now you're having to speak in a different way around your friends and around your family, and you have an identity that you've developed. You have a way that you see yourself, and they have a way that they see you. You have a way that you relate with them, and they have a way that they relate with you in the way that you currently speak. And when you change that homeostasis, it becomes unbalanced. Like, whoa, why is the person speaking like this now? Why are they speaking slower? Why are they using this kind of a rhythm? Why are they using their hands? They're not speaking the same way. And you might be speaking better, but to you, it feels weird. To your friends, it seems strange and different. But this is normal. It's supposed to feel that way. It's supposed to, right? You can't create a smoother, clearer, calmer, more confident speaking style and become that kind of a person if you're not doing something different than you've been used to doing, right? It's got to be different, and therefore it has to feel what? It has to feel awkward. I tell my clients, if when you are out speaking to people and you're practicing, you're using your new way of speaking, if you don't feel awkward, then you're probably not doing it right. You're probably not doing it any differently. If it feels regular, then that means you're doing it the same way you have been doing it. So that means you must necessarily feel awkward when you're out trying to use your new speaking style. It's going to feel awkward, and that's letting you know that, hey, I'm doing this right, because it feels weird, it feels strange. And remember, it may not necessarily sound weird. We're not promoting weird sounding speech. Really, if you're doing it right, it should sound very natural, it should sound very smooth, but it's going to sound to you very different. And I've had people tell, oh, this is not the way I speak. Exactly. That's the whole point. This is not the way you speak. That's why we need to speak this way. So it's got to feel awkward, but some people are unwilling to experience that awkwardness. They're willing to practice it by themselves. They might try it with me, but then when they get out and they talk to their family or their friends, their coworkers, they're unwilling to feel awkward. And here's the thing. If you want to achieve success in any area of life, but especially with your speech, you're going to have to be willing to feel awkward. In fact, you want to embrace feeling awkward, because that's your pathway through to smooth speech. Okay? So what's the next one? The next one here. The next one is that the person is focused on a negative goal. The person is focused on a negative goal. When we say that the person is focused on a negative goal, what we mean is that they're focused on, now listen to this, watch this, they're focused on how to stop stuttering or stammering. I don't want to stutter or stammer, or I want to stop smoking, for example. I want to stop, right? So they're saying, I want to stop stuttering. I don't want to stutter anymore. Now, this is a negative goal, and generally speaking, negative goals are not good. So when you have a negative goal, so if you're going through a program and your goal is negative, I want to stop stuttering, then what happens is every time that you are trying to speak differently, or use a new way of speaking, or use whatever tools or techniques that you've been taught, but you're thinking and you're focused on stopping, I don't want to stutter, I'm not stuttering, right? what has to happen, and I've explained this before in many other videos, but I'll explain it again because this might be your first time watching this video, is in order for you to actually know, in order for your brain to know what it means, if you tell yourself, I don't want to stutter in this speaking situation, I want to stop, I don't want to do it, it's something that I don't want to do, your brain has to say, well, what is it that you don't want to do? All right, so when you say, I don't want to stutter in this speaking situation, then your brain says, okay, what does it mean to stutter? He says he doesn't want to stutter. What does it mean? And you don't even realize that this is going on, but your brain goes back to your previous experiences, and it says, okay, here's a similar situation where we're introducing ourselves or we're talking to someone that we don't know. And so what does it mean to stutter? Well, it means that we get stuck and we get nervous and we block on this word and that word. Okay, that's what it means. That's what it feels like. All right, and well, we don't want to do this. Well, then what is it that we want to do? It doesn't really know, right? Your brain only is focused on what you said you don't want to do. So it almost deletes the don't and focuses on the word itself, the concept, the idea of stuttering. It says, oh, we don't want to stutter, but I need to know what stuttering means. Okay, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? Oh, now I have a picture. Well, guess what? Think about this. Now I want you to watch this. The whole time that you're speaking, or that you're about to speak, or you're about to enter into a situation, and you're thinking, I don't want to do this, I want to avoid stuttering, what is your brain doing? Well, as it's thinking about avoiding it, not doing it, it is actually visualizing it, it's emotionalizing it, it's thinking about it, right? It's defining what it is. And guess what you get more of when you actually enter that particular situation? When you get more of what you didn't want to do. Why? Because that's exactly what you were thinking about. That's what your brain was thinking about. So we have to be careful about when we say that we don't want to do something, because in fact the brain has to kind of remove the don't or the not and focus on the thing that we said we don't want to do. And it literally draws us to that. I've watched people for the past 6 years plus. I've watched people when they're speaking and they were thinking of not stuttering, and I've watched them get worse and worse because they were thinking of not stuttering. So therefore they were thinking of stuttering, right? Now, I've also watched them think about speaking smoothly. I've watched them talk about speaking smoothly. I've watched them think about modeling. And then we've seen them speak smoother. So whenever they're trying to avoid something or not do something, they do more of it. So when you're going through a program or a therapy or a treatment, and the focus is how to stop something, even how to treat it. How do we treat stuttering? How do we reduce stuttering? How do we manage stuttering? It's all negative, right? It's all negative. So if you're thinking about not doing it and reducing it and treating it, what you're doing is you're thinking about the very thing that you really don't want to spend any time thinking about at all. All right? So again, we're going to get to some expectations that you should set and what you should think about. But the focus of this video is really to give you 8 reasons why some How to Stop Stuttering programs don't work. Now let's talk about 4 that are related to the program. These were related to the person going through the program. The person going through the program. So often, or the treatment, or the therapy, often it's because of us. Sometimes it's not the program. Sometimes it's us, right? But sometimes the program is lacking. The treatment is lacking, okay? So let's just talk about 4 reasons why a program might not work. That's based on the program. So the first one has to do with this. It's treatment oriented rather than being, or treatment oriented, but it's not transformationally focused. Okay, it's treatment oriented and not transformationally focused. I'll just stand to the side here a little bit. Sorry if I've been blocking it earlier, but I will move back over here in just a second, but I want you to be able to see it. So some programs are more treatment oriented. Now, I'm not saying treatment is bad or that it doesn't ever work. Remember, I said why some programs or therapies or treatments don't work. Not all. Some don't work because they're treatment oriented and they're not transformationally focused. So I know you're wondering, what do you mean when you say transformationally focused? So let's talk about that. When we say transformationally focused, we're talking about not just trying to tweak or change or manage or improve the way you currently speak. Because generally what happens is if you're someone that struggles with your speech, you stammer or stutter, you've also developed an identity around that, right? You have beliefs around your possibilities, around your ability to speak, and around what you're capable of doing. And so there are certain jobs maybe you won't apply for, certain things that you won't do, certain times where you won't stand up and ask a question or you won't raise your hand. So certain things that you probably don't do where you limit yourself in one way or another. So I've chosen majors based on the fact, well, if I do that, I'm going to have to speak a lot, or I'm going to have to take this class, and I don't really want to have to do that, so let me do this instead. So some people have arranged their whole life, like one of my clients from Turkey said, that he arranged his life around his speech. I said this before in another video, but he told me that when he was looking for places to live, he would literally look for a place that was near a shopping center or supermarket where he could go online and have food delivered, or he could go online and order his food so he wouldn't have to speak with anyone. He could just go order and then go in and pick up his food, or they would drop it off. So he literally arranged his life. He arranged where he lived so that he would have to speak less. He would have his girlfriend and his family make important phone calls for him, right? He arranged his life around. Now he doesn't have to do that. Now he's having problems finding things. I just talked to him today, guy from Turkey, awesome guy. He's having problems finding situations that will challenge him now. He's just like, well, yeah, I'm interviewing for jobs that I don't want, but I'm just interviewing, and I'm having problems challenging myself now. His speech has gotten that much better. They just can't find anything to challenge himself. So when we talk about transformationally oriented, we're talking about changing your speaking identity, changing your beliefs about yourself as a speaker. Now, what does this look and feel like in the end? Well, what it looks and feels like is that you no longer think of yourself and see yourself as a person who stutters or stammers. You see yourself as an excellent speaker who occasionally gets stuck just like everyone else. You have disfluencies. Everyone else has disfluencies. Your disfluencies may come from having stuttered, right? There might be times where you can't get something out, but they're still so small percentage-wise that it really doesn't matter. I still have this. I mean, someone could say technically that I still stutter sometimes. Technically, I still stutter sometimes, right? There are times where I block or I get stuck or I can't say something. So technically, yeah, you could call that stuttering. But I don't see myself as a person who stutters, and my speech has gotten to a level where it's become an asset for me, right? And so I probably have less disfluencies than the average person, but the ones that I do have, so what? So what if I get stuck every now and then? We're all going to get stuck. That's okay. But if you focus on transforming your speech and transforming your speaking identity, now your speech can become an asset, right? So if a program is just trying to treat your speech, help you manage it, help you reduce the stuttering so that you can be normal and you can kind of get by and make it through life, well, that's okay for some people, but it may not get you to where you want to go. I'd rather have something that's transformational where I'm not just a person managing my speech, I'm a person who my speech is now one of my greatest assets. I can go out and get jobs because of my speech. I can influence people because of my speech. When I speak, people listen. That's the kind of person I would want to be, right? And I'm sure that some of you watching it, that's where you want to be as well. So you want a program that's transformationally focused, that's going to take you above just not start, above mediocre speech. Remember, you've probably heard me say this, you don't get any extra points in life, in interviews and jobs, for not stuttering. You just don't get any extra points for it. You do get extra points for being an excellent communicator, a superior speaker, an amazing presenter. You do get extra points for that. Two people going through an interview, one person doesn't stutter, the other person's an excellent speaker. All other things being equal, who gets the job? The person that communicated better, right? The person that's an excellent speaker. So not stuttering is mediocre. Becoming an excellent speaker is awesome, right? So you want something that's going to be transformationally focused, not just treatment oriented, okay? So let's look at the next one here. I hope that that's helpful for you. It's helpful for me. It's helpful for me anyway. Some programs are one-dimensional. One-dimensional, right? Some programs are one-dimensional. And I'll be a little brief on this one because this will make sense for you relatively quickly. With most people, and I'm purposely not using absolutes like all people and everyone and all the time in every program, right? I'm not using universal terms. So for some people, for some programs, or for most people who struggle with their speech or stutter, there's both a psychological dimension, psychological aspect to it, and a physiological dimension. By psychological, I mean there are emotions that go along with it, people feeling embarrassed, self-esteem dropping down, especially when it comes to speech, self-confidence dropping down, people feeling frustrated, people feeling isolated, right? All those things, anticipating, all those things happen, and they're impacting the way we think, our mentality, our mindset, our emotions, right? Our psychology. And then there is the physiology, right? That is how we actually speak. Are we speaking too fast? Are we chopping off our words? Are we losing air? Are we not maintaining airflow? Right? All these things. Are we not articulating clearly? Are we speaking monotone? Are we not using any body language? All of these things. So there's the physiology, right? The physical way that we speak, okay? And so some programs are just mono-dimensional. They only focus on the physiology. Some touch on the psychology, but they say, well, just do these affirmations. Here are some affirmations. I love affirmations. They say, well, just do the affirmations. Boom, and you're good. Do the affirmations and work on this. So some and many, many treatment programs and so forth are just uni or mono-dimensional. They just focus on the one thing, on your speech. But they don't necessarily focus on the psychology. The ones that do focus on the psychology may only focus on just affirmations, okay? But what we know is that this is multi-dimensional, right? It has to do with your psychology, it has to do with different aspects of your psychology. And all of those things have to be at least acknowledged and addressed in one way or another. It has to do with your identity. Often the way that you speak has changed your personality to a degree. And it might not be a permanent change, but some people are really outgoing. They really love to get out there and speak to people and socialize, but because of their speech, they don't, right? So it's changed our personalities to a degree. So we want a program or an approach that addresses at least both of those, the psychological and the physiological. Does this make sense? Okay? Because if not, you're going to be missing out on a major part of improving your speech, right? There's a major part that is related to improving your speech that if the program doesn't address it, then all of a sudden you find, okay, I'm using these techniques, I'm using these tools. In fact, there are some programs out there that focus, that have affirmations and so forth, that believe that you should go out and just let people know, hey, I'm going to be speaking in this way, and I often struggle with my speech, and so in order to speak well, I have to speak this way. And they focus on breathing a certain way, and it's probably helped millions of people over the years to be able to communicate well. So, and we're going to talk about this in just a moment. So the focus is primarily on breathing a certain way, that feels a little awkward, that feels a little strange. I'm sure it can become natural, but it doesn't sound very natural for many people, right? So it doesn't sound natural, it doesn't necessarily feel natural, and it's pretty one-dimensional, right? So if it's one-dimensional, it may not work for you. It may not work for you. So let's move on and take a look at another one here. We just have a couple more here. So, and this is one that we just talked about. So it kind of forces you, or at least encourages you, to speak unnaturally. Let's just leave it at that. Speak unnaturally, right? It forces you or encourages you to speak unnaturally. So I was listening to someone that was using a certain kind of breathing technique, and it sounded very, very unnatural. In fact, the person said they didn't like the way it sounded, and therefore they didn't want to use it. But they said it's better than stuttering. Well, why should you have to make a choice between speaking in a way that doesn't feel or sound very smooth or good, or stuttering? You shouldn't have to make that choice. You should be able to speak smoothly, to be able to speak in a way that sounds good to you, feels good to you, and is pleasant to other people who are listening. And the fact is that even as a person who speaks, who stutters or stammers, and maybe even severely, you can get to the place where you can speak and sound naturally. But it's going to require you to do the work and set realistic expectations. It's going to require you to literally immerse yourself in the process. So some program, and I use the word force, they don't necessarily force you, but it teaches you to speak in an unnatural way. It sounds unnatural, it feels unnatural, so therefore people don't want to do it. There are other programs that teach you to elongate all of your words and sound almost like a robot. And so people say, well, yeah, I can do that and I won't stutter, but who wants to speak like that? I'd almost rather stutter, right? So then any program or therapy or treatment that teaches you to do that, what happens is a lot of people choose not to do it, okay? And so therefore they're stuck with this choice, and often people will just revert back to stuttering because they just don't want to speak that way. Some people say that even about my program. They say, well, you're teaching me to speak in a different way and I don't want to do it, I'd rather stutter. Okay, then this isn't the program for you. But this program, the Pro90 speech system, teaches you to speak in a very natural way, to have a natural rhythm, to have natural breathing, rhythm, right? So it's very, very natural, the same way that I'm speaking now. This is the way that we're teaching you to speak. So there's nothing unnatural. Sure, in fact, if you're listening to me, you'll hear me extend some of my words. You'll see me inflect. You'll hear me sometimes take in a deeper breath. This is all very natural. These are skills that people use who speak well. So certainly if you want to speak well, then it's okay to elongate, if you will, some of your words, but not all of your words, okay? So then it forces you or teaches you, encourages you to speak in an unnatural way, and so some people don't do it, so it just doesn't work. Now the final one is that it's not well suited, you may not be able to see this, but is that the program is not well suited for professionals. I'm just going to put pros. It's not well suited for professionals. What do I mean by this? Well, if you're a professional, like I have many physicians and I have scientists and engineers who come through my program, and they struggle with their speech in one way or another, and they need to be able to speak well, right? Not just not stutter. They have clients, they have patients, they have faculty, they have people that they need to be able to speak to and present themselves intelligently. They need to be able to communicate clearly, calmly, confidently, with authority. So not stuttering is not enough. So therefore, they're professionals, they need something more. So you want a program that helps you to present yourself, your thoughts and ideas, in a way that is smooth, that is clear, that is calm, but still engaging. Calm doesn't mean boring and slow. It just means that you're relaxed, you're centered, you're poised, right? And that is confident, where people believe what you're saying. You're speaking with authority. When you speak, they listen and they are influenced by you. They want to take action based on what you said. You want to be able to speak this way, especially if you're a professional. So if you're going through a program or treatment that isn't geared to help you to present your thoughts and ideas that way, then it's probably not going to work for you. So you want something that has a whole presentation component to it, right? When I say presentation, I'm not just talking about what I'm doing now or standing in front of a group. Every time you are sharing your thoughts and ideas, you're presenting your thoughts and ideas, you're presenting your thoughts. So it can be with one person, it can be in an interview, it can be when you're sitting around the dinner table and you want to share your thoughts out, you're presenting yourself. So we're talking about presenting your thoughts and ideas in a formal as well as an informal setting. Does that make sense? So when you hear me say presentation, I'm not just talking about PowerPoint slides and standing up. It could be one-on-one and I'm just sharing my thoughts or ideas. I can be arguing my thought. I'm presenting. That's what we're talking about. So you want a program that helps you do that as well. So let's walk back through these and then let's just briefly wrap it up with some things that you should look for and some things that you can do. We talked about these first four being things that you and I often do when we get into programs. That sometimes we set unrealistic expectations. We say, oh, the program's supposed to heal me, cure me, get rid of this 100%. We know that chances are that's not. Even if you go through hypnotism, you still have to participate in it for a period of time, and you have to be willing to accept, right, the suggestions that you're being given and act on them. So what hypnotism does is it gets you out of your own way, gets your conscious thinking out of the way so the suggestions can go directly into your subconscious mind and get seated there. But you have to be willing to do that, and you have to be consistent at it, right? You have to have the information there when it comes to speech. You got to have the skill and the information there for those suggestions to go in and to take root and to actually activate and use. So I've had lots of people go through hypnotism, but didn't have a foundation of speaking well. They spoke too fast, they stammered, right? And there is a psychological side, and hypnotism can help address that psychological side. But what about the physiological side? Well, they didn't have that, so this didn't really help. They simply reverted right back to, right? They made a temporary chemical change in their speech. They got excited, and they didn't get in their own way mentally, which helped them to speak better temporarily. But then the hard wiring, the way that they spoke was there. That just, boom, snapped back. So you got to deal with that as well. You got to deal with both those things. So some of us, we set unrealistic expectations over the time, how quickly this is supposed to happen. We're looking for perfect speech. There's no perfect speech. No one's perfect 100% of the time. There are some people that might be perfect during certain periods of time, but they're not perfect 100% of the time. They're unwilling to do the work. We just don't do the work. Let's just face it. Sometimes we're inconsistent in doing the work. So we need to be more consistent and understand this is the way you learn. This is the way you create new patterns, new habits, new ways of speaking. And that's what you're doing with the speech thing. If you're looking for tips and tricks, that's exactly what you're going to get. Tips and tricks and techniques and even strategies that help you in the short term, that may actually support you speaking smoother in the long term, but it's not going to transform your speaking identity. It's just you're going to have to rely on techniques for the rest of your life. You got to use this technique to say this, right? We don't want that. We want you to get to the place where you're no longer thinking about speaking and you can say whatever you want to say. And yes, occasionally you're going to get stuck. So we're unwilling to do the work sometimes. We're unwilling to feel awkward. You're learning something, you must feel awkward for a period of time. So if you're unwilling to use this new way in different situations that you find yourself in, then you'll never change the way you speak, the way you identify yourself in those situations. If you're not willing to feel awkward for a period of time, you won't feel awkward forever. So we have to be willing to go through this period of feeling uncomfortable and awkward, right? And then finally here, this is the us side. We are focused on a negative goal. I want to stop doing this. I don't want to do that. So when we focus on a negative goal, we're actually allowing our brain to think about the very thing that we want to stop doing, that we don't want to do, that we want to avoid. So what we have to do, I want you to hear this, you have to think about, how do I want to speak? How do I want to feel? And that's what we want to shift our focus to. Not to what we want to avoid or stop, but how we want to speak. Okay? Now let's talk about the 4 reasons that some programs may not work for you. One is that it's treatment-oriented and not transformational. The Pro-90 speech system is designed, it's a scientifically based system that's designed to transform you into a brand new speaker. That is, you change your identity so you don't see yourself. I was just talking to a client just the other day. He lives in Abu Dhabi. And I asked him I said, do you still feel like a stutterer? Do you still see? He says, no, I don't see myself as a person who stutters anymore. Bam, he's got it. So transformationally focused. It's transforming how you see yourself and how you speak. So it's not just this mental positive thing, but your speech is still the same. No, we're transforming the way you think and the way that you speak. You're speaking better. You're speaking smoother. You're speaking clearer, right? Speaking more confidently. All right? The next one is one-dimensional. It's not addressing the psychology, or it's only addressing one aspect of the psychology. So it doesn't address the psychology at all, or just one aspect. And it's only addressing the physiology, or some just addressing the psychology and not the physiology, not how you physically speak. Okay? And then this one, it forces you to speak unnaturally. So it focuses on having you breathe in a way that feels very unnatural, sounds unnatural, or it forces you to speak in a way that just doesn't sound good. You wouldn't want to get up and do a presentation speaking that way. I was talking to someone and they said, you know, some of those programs or some of those treatments are fine, but there are certain jobs where if you struggle with your speech, the job requires you to be able to speak well. It's not that they're against people who stutter, it's just that it requires you, in order, their customers need to be able to hear you, to understand you, to follow what you're saying, and so it requires a person who's an excellent speaker, who's a good speaker. And so some people who struggle with their speech can't get into some of those jobs because it's a requirement that they speak smoothly. So therefore, if you have to speak unnaturally, there are certain things that you probably won't be able to do. I'm not saying you won't be able to be super successful, because you obviously can, people are. But why limit yourself? Why limit yourself? Why not improve your speech? Why not become an excellent speaker if it takes you doing a little bit of work or doing a lot of work, right? So forces you to speak unnaturally, unnatural breathing and so forth. And then the last one is it may not be well suited for professionals, people that need to take their speech to the next level. You don't get extra points for being mediocre, for not stuttering. You get those extra points for being an excellent speaker. So why not do something that's going to give you that? And yes, it is possible, but it's going to take some hard work. It's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm just telling you. So what do you want to do? So when you're looking at different programs, you want to make sure that you ask yourself if you're willing, and make sure that you set realistic expectations, that you're willing to do the work. Go through this list again and watch this program. Even if you're looking at another program, maybe you don't like the Pro-90D, maybe you don't like me, that's okay. Find something that's going to make sure that it addresses you make sure that it addresses all of these areas appropriately. Some of you will want to take a look at the Pro-90D speech system. It's the ultimate smooth speech system. You will want to take a look at that. And if you do, I'll tell you the fastest way to get the smooth speech is private coaching. If you don't have the resources for that, then save up for it. I've had people save for it. But it's the fastest way. People who work on their own tend to take longer and they're inconsistent. But you can do it. And so I have a self-study that you can take a look at. But if you really want to get there and you want to accelerate your progress and you want to get the most out of it, you're going to want to get in touch with me about the private coaching. Okay, that's the best way, that's the fastest way. So thank you so much for watching this. If you are a professional and you're out there, or if you're professionally minded and you're tired of struggling, let me just tell you, you don't need to struggle. You don't need to struggle for the rest of your life. This works. I've been doing it for 6 years straight now, and it works. It really does. It's based on science, and it works. I don't know how many times I have, but it really does work if you do the work and you set realistic expectations. So stop struggling with your speech. Stop avoiding. Stop living life beneath your potential. I'm going to do a whole video on this, but remember, there are people out there waiting for your voice, waiting to hear your voice. And the longer you take to work on your speech, the longer those people go without. There are literally people out there suffering because they're not getting your voice, they're not hearing your voice. There are inventions, there are businesses, there are things that are not happening because it's missing you. It's missing your voice. So you don't have to limit yourself. I've talked to people who have stopped dreaming. They've stopped planning for their future in a sense. They've stopped visualizing what they could do because of the limitation of their speech. You don't have to do that. You can envision a better future for yourself. You can do more because you can transform your speech. All right? So if you want to do that, if you're ready to do that, get in touch with me. There'll be a link or a little circle in one of the corners of this video. If you're looking at the video, it's generally in your upper right-hand corner. Little circle with an eye on it. Just click that, click the link in there, and you'll be able to get in touch with me. But only do that if you're serious and you're ready to go. You're ready to do something now. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Michael Williams, and we'll see you soon.